Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Jegna and The Thinker. I am Brandon Jones, one of your co-hosts with Aaron, and we have a special guest, the legendary Sam Simmons. How you all doing today?
I'm doing well. Is Sam ready to go?
Look, I'm fine. I'm my usual grouchy self. How about
that? That's perfect. That's perfect. There you go.
So it has been a long week here in the Twin Cities. Actually, I mean, it's been a long year of just pain and trauma. But this past 2 weeks, we've had several young people who've been shot. There was another mass, I guess we could say a mass shooting last night in the what's called the North Loop of Minneapolis, where several people were shot over a disagreement. But really what has happened is the city has gotten to this kind of state of grief yet again due to having three young people, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old being shot. The 10 and the 8-year-old are currently in the hospital fighting for their lives. And the 6-year-old girl, unfortunately, she passed away a few days ago. So we wanted to talk a little bit about manhood, masculinity. How does this show up when these things are happening within our communities? And also talk about this concept known as post-traumatic growth. You know, this is not a concept that I developed. This is a concept that has been out in the psychology space for quite some time. But when you think about it from the perspective of Black folks, we really have to, one, question the title of it, but two, also take the context of what it actually is. And can Black folks go beyond the trauma that we've experienced? You know, our trauma isn't post. Our trauma is present. Our trauma shows up, unfortunately, every day. And we wanted to just have a conversation amongst Black men about that today. So to start us off, when you gentlemen hear the term post-traumatic growth, what comes to mind to you? And then after I get your responses, I'll share a definition.
Well, I mean, it's within the name, how do you grow after a traumatic experience? What does that mean? What does that entail? And what does that look like? Yeah, that's what it means to me at this point. Yes.
How about you?
I heard the term the other day, and I heard it on Philippe, and that was the first time I heard it. And he had mentioned it, and said you were the one that he said you coined it. He said you coined it. But when I heard it, it immediately made me just think about culture and just Black culture in general. And that should be our focus in identifying it properly, is that we've had these traumatic experiences. And then the first thing I thought about was not the experiences, but how we always respond to these experiences. And the positive ways that we can respond to it is how we grow. And I think we do a lot of focusing. This is just my opinion. I could be wrong. I think we do a lot of focusing about talking about the trauma, but we don't do a lot of focusing about how we're responding properly to it and how to grow from it. And so I thought the term was just genius. I've never heard it in academic circles. I've listened to a lot of stuff, and it was the first time I heard it. I just thought it was brilliant. And I think that should be the focus, is how do we grow from these experiences? Like, there's so much content on YouTube and just everywhere. I mean, you got books talking about the negative things that have happened, but not enough content about how do we grow from it and recognizing that it's traumatic, but just, okay, it doesn't matter anymore. We acknowledge it, but now what can we do to move forward? So that was that's really where it came from.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna share the definition that I've worked from with this term, and maybe I am the person who brought this into these Black social media spaces, even though I am not the originator of the term. So here is the definition that I work from when it comes to post-traumatic growth. It is the process of post-traumatic growth. So the process of post-traumatic growth can lead to improved relationships with others, more compassion, openness, appreciation for life, spiritual growth, personal strength, and a renewed sense of possibilities in the world. And when I came across this concept a few years ago, I was really searching for what can we do next. Unfortunately, as Black folks in the United States, we have grown accustomed to dealing with adversity. Sam and I did a live radio show locally here yesterday, and we had a caller call in, and he was talking about we shouldn't get away from our strength, and we should take pride in being strong and dealing with adversity. And our response to him was, well, when do we stop having pride and having pain done to us? And when do we start living to evolve and not just take blows? And he didn't give us a response because his call ended. But really, our comments were given to the community to really process and think about what's next. We don't have to stay in this consistent state of just always responding to trauma. We can't have life where adversity doesn't have to be at the center of it. So, any thoughts from the two of you based on this concept here?
Well, sometimes this kind of stuff complicates for a little simple old Black man like me. Um, because Aaron was talking about, we talk about trauma and we don't do anything about it. Really address it and that kind of stuff. And we talk about the bad things that's happened to us and really don't address it. But I don't, even I don't think as a community we're really fully honest even about the trauma, right? I don't, we're always in a hurry to get past having a real conversation, right? And a real conversation about what the real effects of this trauma has had on us and really process that piece. So you talk about, you look at the definition of post-traumatic growth, and what that definition told me is what will result if you grow post-traumatically. That's what that definition tells me. That's what's going to happen. You're going to have better relationships. You're going to, have a different look at the future and this other kind of stuff. But I don't hear enough. I don't hear, growth can lead, that's what will happen if you do it. That's what I see in terms of the definition. And so according to some of our people, you listen to some of our people, we have already grown already. Right. And so it's like, we're so damn confused about trauma because we really don't want to have an honest a full conversation. And I probably should say it that way, a full conversation. We want to have a partial conversation. We want to have a conversation about trauma from a victim position, right? We will talk about the trauma, the abuse, the historical trauma. But I was on a conversation with the Jewish community on Wednesday. I did an interview with the I think it's the New York Jewish Museum. Had different folks from the Native community. I represented the African American community, and you had the Jewish community, and you even had somebody from the German community, which was interesting as well. And the statement she quoted a Black scholar who says we weren't really affected by slavery. We were really affected by the mistreatment after slavery, right? Initially I wanted to get all bent out of shape, because how I, we got to deal with the full range of trauma. And I thought about it because when I thought about my example of, you go 246 years or so many years of trauma of slavery, which was real clear. You either a slave or you not. It's like, you might be a house nigga, but you still a slave. You either a slave or you not. I mean, you
Right.
might have different levels. And so when somebody tells you that the slavery is over, there's a certain expectation of freedom that you think you're going to have, which never quite happened. So I do believe that there's a larger psychological effect to that, right? And I use the example having a child taken out of what we would call an abusive home, and then putting them in foster care and be abused in foster care, right? It's like, okay, you told me this was going to be better, and it wasn't. Now, the ironic part, this is a side note, ironic part, somebody who represented the National Foster Care Association was offended by my example. It's like, please, I'm not even going to respond. If you're doing great work, don't. It's like if if it doesn't apply to you, don't bother me, right? Because I do work in the community, and I know that foster care at times is not functioning well. And then back in the 80s, nobody really cared about foster care. They just wanted to find some place to put our children. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. And I'll be so the thing is I understood his thought process and his the way he framed it once I sat down and got past my own emotions. But when I say we only deal with our trauma partially, we still don't do enough about dealing with, okay, how did that trauma or that continuous trauma, how does it affect how we traumatize each other, which is the most deepest trauma in our community, and how has that trauma really defined what we call, be honest about that trauma. We have to be honest about how it defines what we call culture. And I don't think we've gotten there. So, that's where I'm at. I don't think we even gotten close, because when you start getting close to that, people start get antsy and stuff. I mean, it's just like, the brother elevating, well, we know how to be mistreated and that kind of stuff. And we strong, we can handle this. It's different than white folks. Now, the thing is, why is it that you as a Black person got to wake up and expect to have some kind of adversity? Why can't I just wake up and expect to have some joy? There's nothing right. That's part of being human too, right? So that's just me.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times when we do have joy, we're so uncomfortable with it that we jeopardize it. We self-sabotage being okay. And we minimize it. Like, like me and Aaron, I think we talked about this on a previous podcast, Aaron, where it's like you might see somebody who got like a nice outfit on, and you be like, man, you look good, you looking sharp. And what they say, oh, I ain't doing too bad. Like, we just minimize just being okay and being happy. Yep. It's very, very interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Aaron?
Actually, Sam, I love learning. And I love learning from the OGs. And the first thing that Sam said was us not being honest. And one of the conversations that I don't think is brought up, but one of those books that was written about the Great Migration. Can't remember the girl's name, but she wrote that book about the Great Migration.
Yeah, Isabel Wilkerson.
Yeah, Isabel Wilkerson. And she talked about the migration from all the Black people from the South running from racism going up to the North. But what nobody really ever talks about, and I didn't have an issue with her book, but I said what nobody ever talks about, and I want Sam's perspective, is that Black people with all this trauma being packed into all these apartment complexes, in all these broken families, people just with all this ghetto, all these people just packed into these places, and then us not talking about the traumatic effects that not even having your own personal spaces, it causes some of the abuse. It causes some of the mistreatment, the domestic violence. Like we're not, and I agree with Sam, we're not comfortable in talking with any of that stuff, because I have had conversations with people that have talked that they have finally gotten comfortable, Brandon, about talking about some of this stuff, but saying, yo, I grew up in an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, and there was 25 people in there. I don't care what human you are on the planet. If you got 25 people in there and you got grown men and little children and you have people that have traumatic experiences, things are going to occur that are going to negatively impact people all the time. And I could be wrong about that. But we're not talking about, I think what Sam is correct. We're not talking about how we responded and what was happening in like these little bubbles that we have, you know what I'm saying, that we created, like all this stuff that was happening, and we're not communicating it properly, and it prevents us from growing. So I wanted to get Sam's thoughts on that.
Well, before you hop in, Sam, let me just add something real quick, because this is important. Sam had mentioned earlier culture. Now, we can talk about having 25 people packed into a 2-bedroom apartment, but there are other ethnic groups who do the same thing, who have a different cultural background than us. And that different cultural background doesn't lead to the same traumatic impacts that we see throughout our community. Because a lot of those folks that come here, they may be, 16 deep in a 2-bedroom apartment, but everybody has a different, but they all have a focus on how they're going to get up out of that situation.
They're
not comfortable with staying where they're at. So I just want to throw that piece in there. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important piece. When you are continuously running from pain, and that's your way of dealing with the pain, and when do you find time to address the pain when you've been conditioned to believe that if pain is not included in your life, that ain't real life, right? And so we didn't have time. I ain't got time to feel. What is some movie or cartoon? I ain't got time to feel. We've done that. I mean, because you are under a constant terror back at home or down south. Because I'm a product of the Great Migration. Because my parents moved in 1954. I was 6 months old, seeking a better life. Came up. Because Black folks had skills. They might not know how to read sometimes, but they had skills and they followed each other. And you're right. Sometimes they only brought part of their family, no different than people who migrated from, across the ocean.
Right.
And those ghettos, as you are describing, those ghettos were not only a result of poverty, but they were a result of racism, because around the same time we were during the Great Migration, there was another migration coming of white Europeans coming at the same time, who were conditioned to see Black folks who were born and raised in America as one of their biggest competitions for the jobs they were fighting for in these northern cities where these factories were. So, we know that ghettos existed before Black folks migrated, but Black ghettos were a issue of segregation and those kind of pieces. And even when we did come up north, we didn't get paid the same. We didn't get the same kind of jobs and that kind of stuff. So when does the struggle stop? And when the struggle is part of your identity, when do you stop and look at the negative sides of the struggle? And one of the biggest deficits around dealing with trauma is the fact that we are unable to do the both and, right? It's always all or nothing. Even when we think about how we respond sometimes in our community to issues in our community, there is no, we have a hard time finding a middle. It's always all or nothing, right? Even when I talk to my clients about the shooting of the young people, their whole response was, well, they didn't say nothing about how do we have lesser guns on the street. It was like, yeah, them Negroes would need to learn how to shoot straight, right? It's like okay, and why? And so, what is the age that and I kind of asked this last night, and we didn't get a response to it. But what is the age where one of our Black children gets shot that we supposed to give a damn? Because our baby's been getting shot out in the street for a long time. Okay. They've been getting, because them are babies. There's in some of these situations, there's babies shooting. You know, there are kids shooting. You know, and as much as we want to talk about adultification of our children by the system, we equally do adultification of our children because of our circumstances, or we believe because of our circumstances are coming. So what age is enough is enough, right? We got these babies under 6, but the thing is we got babies out here carrying guns that are 10, 11, 12 years old. And so the thing is that we feel that if we really got honest about the effects of this trauma on the effects of what we call culture, what we call how we deal with family. Like one woman, when I was on my way to the show and I told her we was going to talk about, she says, we really got to talk about how harshly we treat our children in our house. How harshly we treat our children in our house, right? She said there was a Facebook post where somebody asked the question, tell me how many different things you've been hit with when you were being whooped. And she was like, and she looked at the list, and the list kept getting bigger. And so there is no healing without full truth. And that's why people don't get in line. If we could get past the pain, the pain that healing requires. See, when we think about healing, we don't think about the pain that it requires. Right? It's like the pain that a surgery requires. Because we're talking about doing major emotional surgery on a community for it to survive emotionally and spiritually, and all those things you talk about in that type of growth. All those things you listed in there, we're talking about a major emotional, spiritual, cultural surgery we need to do that will take bravery and honesty and even in more pain to come out the other side at a level that that will be scary not only to our so-called enemies, and for the fact it might be scary to some of us.
Hey, got a question for both of you. Can I ask a question, Brandon? Why is it so difficult for us as individuals? Well, I guess let me rephrase this a little bit. Do humans in general know that by owning their own circumstances and owning their own pain, that there is a release that can happen and you can grow? Do we even, on an individual level, do we even have a concept of that at all?
I think for me, this is based in culture again, right? So we're talking about Black folks. We have grown to a place of comfort around dealing with that pain. So we take our scars as almost like badges of honor, or like in the military, you get stars for particular things, or you get Purple Hearts. That's how we take our
killing
pain.
people. Yeah, killing
exactly.
People.
Same difference. Killing ourselves one way or another. And what ends up happening is you can own, that adversity that you've been through, or that pain that you've been through. But when you're using that to fuel your, your identity, I think that is unhelpful. I've heard stuff like, I was born alone, I'm gonna die alone. That shit ain't true. No, you weren't. You were not born alone, and you ain't gonna die alone. But this is the mentality that we have in our community, because we don't trust one another. The anti-Blackness is so high that we start to put together and piece together these false narratives of who we are, and start to see ourselves as these lone rangers. And then we try to develop community out of that, relationships, parenting. Like, that stuff gets painful because we are always seen as a victim. And that's what Sam was talking about earlier. Yes, we have been victims of this system. And yeah, we've been victims of other Black folks with anti-Blackness as well. But when you adapt that victim mentality, where do you go from there besides always seeing the world out to get you? And I think that's one of the dangerous narratives that we just have had over the last couple of years, with just like even things like Black Lives Matter, where it's like there's no victory in there. It's just like all day victim. everybody's out to get you. And then we get to a point where people start like going into panic modes and having high levels of anxiety when they're having normal day-to-day activity and interactions with people, but they see themselves as a victim, that they make a situation out of no situation that ain't even there.
Well, I think let's see, how do we come up with an answer? There's the, I know a lot of people have heard the term self-defeating behavior, and the term is self-explanatory, behavior that you defeat yourself with, right? Um, but let me I break this concept down with my clients as it was broken down to me. Is self-defeating behavior usually we define it as something that starts out positive, used to long term negative. And what I mean by start out positive, it's positive in its result in the moment to deal with a possibly an experience that was not positive. Let me do that one more time. It is a response. It's positive because it helped you survive or get through a moment that was not positive. Okay. So there's a lot of ways, and Joy DeGruy has this short video that really talks about gives an example of that, right? And so if there's behaviors as Black people, especially with us who have had uh, this experience of of American slavery, and there's some ways we have learned to survive this craziness, this inhuman craziness, to continue to move, right? And then we call it resiliency. And a lot of those things we use worked in the moment, okay? But we're still using them, right? And that's when you use them past its usefulness. And basically, if you use them, basically it was like if you use these behaviors, but you don't evolve past those behaviors, it ends up being counterproductive. And we've been in that space for a long time. So that's what makes it self-defeating. And then people and then the sad part about it is people say, well, why don't you just stop the behavior? Well, we are scared to stop the behavior. The so-called brave Black folks, we're scared to stop that behavior, right? We're scared to be too easy on. We're scared of being too easy on our boys. We're scared to be to do what we done claim to are given to white folks because we're scared of using that so-called Black card, whatever the hell that is. Okay. Um, and people say, I ain't scared of nothing. But if you really want to find a person's fear, is what is the worst thing going to happen to you if you stop doing that behavior? Because people don't usually get that. What is the worst thing going to happen to you if you stop doing that behavior? Right? And if they and a lot of times people will answer before they think about it, they'll answer. And it's usually tied to some fear, manufactured in their trauma experience, passed down to you from your parents, passed down to you from your cultural experience. So we are a walking self-defeating behavior, and even when we want to do something different, we drop right back into what old behavior. It's like having somebody who talks about leadership and they sound great and everything else, and then after a while they end up doing the same old victimy shit that we always walk into, right? It's like I often say when I talk about Black people and I talk about our experience, I very, very, as best I can, don't want to talk about white people. Because when you include white people into the conversation is no longer ours, right? But we want to throw white people in there because we don't want the conversation to be ours because we can't handle the truth. We have artificial braveness, artificial self-esteem, all this other kind of stuff. We can talk it, and we will. And if you push us, If you push us, we'll act it out. Any means necessary. But how much closer does that get us to really doing what we need to do? Because to do some of the stuff we need to do in our community is going to take so much. It takes so much bravery. It means that I have to go up against my mama, my daddy, and my damn preacher, right? And I'm not sure if I'm fully. I don't know if you ever recover, because sometimes I actually, if I'm gonna be honest, I actually miss the fact that I don't have folks I hang out with regularly, because I just don't, right? I mean, it's not being easy like me, because some folks, even my close friends, don't like being around me socially because I make them uncomfortable, because I don't talk small talk, or and I don't talk about dumb shit, and I don't talk about dumb black shit. I don't talk about dumb white shit, right? And I'm in, not that I can't be fun, play my music, get my little, good drink on, that kind of stuff. But the thing is that, and I don't even try to make folks uncomfortable, but you can see it, right? And I'll go sit in the corner and don't say nothing, makes people uncomfortable. Like, I bet you he's over there judging me. I don't give a damn what nobody does. As long as you ain't doing it to me, I don't care what you do. And when I'm off the clock, and you ain't doing it to me, and you ain't doing it to somebody's baby, I'm good. Because I've learned that I have to allow people to be people. We don't even do that. Think about it. We'll think we're the most educated person in the world, and we just don't let. If a person want to act niggerish, let them act niggerish. As long as they ain't doing it to you. You wanna judge somebody, but at the same time want to talk about what man, yeah, they over there being niggerish, man. That's entertaining sometimes. As long as you keep that stuff over there, we good, man. I ain't got time to be judging you. Yeah, look at her fat ass. She thinks she cute. Yeah, and what are you? Evidently, you don't think you cute because you judging her. What the and we do this all the time. And then but we want to be, and then when somebody pushes on it, then we want to change the subject about white people. What white people do. I don't give a damn what white people do. White people got their own issues. They brought them over here with them.
Facts.
Okay. and they've been trying to blame us for all their issues. That's why other cultures don't want to have nothing to do with us. We live in a true state of black and white. We got a mirror on us that we put on us, that white folks put on us, on us. And so, of course, we don't want to admit to our trauma. Of course, we don't want to admit that we might not be doing the best for our children. Of course, we don't admit all that because we think we done give white folks, well, we admitted to that makes them right. Motherfuckers, you need to deal with your children. I mean, I'm sorry, but and I don't care what anybody else is doing at that point. I don't care. I am tired. These babies get shot in the head. Nobody gets shot in the head because they're sitting low in the seat because somebody is shooting at whoever's driving that car. Folks ain't going around aiming at no children not for no black folks. And then we're going to get on TV and, we're going to cry, and then y'all going to come in and y'all need to turn yourself in. Why am I going to turn myself in? Man, it's Saturday. Man, it's warm. Man, I should be having.
Brandon, I'm telling you, Sam and Mr. Fuller are the same.
This is what I've been trying to tell people for years. I know a real Mr. Fuller. That's what I've been trying to tell folks. You talk about being codified. Sam don't even know who Millie Fuller Jr. is.
Right.
It's just old wisdom.
But he practices no contact, no conflict.
Oh my God, man! I'm I wish I've learned knew we had some of this wisdom earlier because I could have been happier earlier. That's why I try to, when y'all young people ask me to do stuff with you and that kind of stuff, I do it because I appreciate where y'all at already, right? And where y'all at already, and how that will be beneficial for your children, but and also being able to support you to know that parts of this road is lonely, and there's going to be people out here, especially both black and white folks, are going to try to take advantage of your wisdom, and you better watch out for them. And then you better get paid. I had some Negro ask me, "Would you, man? I bet you get. Would you do this if you wasn't getting paid?" No, I wouldn't do it, man. Why would I deal with you every week and not get paid? Why? You wouldn't come into my group if you didn't have a probation officer.
Facts. Yeah,
You
it's
know,
got to
I,
be a benefit.
it's like,
Yeah.
would you, man, this is the greatest group I've ever been in. Can I come after I graduate? I said, yeah. Everybody who graduated my group has a seat here. You know how many people have taken advantage of it? Out of the 1,000 people I done had in my group, 5. So you tell that lie to yourself. I said, now, how many of you would have came to this group now that you're here and you think this is the greatest thing in shows? How many of you would have came on your own? Man, we'll run away from something good for us and so quick. Man, we like on skates. We got to go. Because the thing is healing is also about being accountable to yourself.
Bingo. Yes.
That's
the first step.
Yeah. And I mean, being consistently accountable to yourself. Right? Doing stuff that's so damn uncomfortable in the beginning because you're worth it. This is not an easy road. And this whole concept about we need to come together and be kumbaya and all, man, I ain't waiting for y'all. If I'm gonna lead, I'm gonna lead, and if you like it, fine. If you don't, fine. But my hope is, and my prayer is that you catch up. Not only catch up, how about you catch up and pass me? And that's where I see you two young men in this situation. Y'all catching up, but there's some things y'all doing that's done past me. Y'all had to drag me kicking and screaming on this podcast crap. I'm here now. I don't think I'm gonna go away. It's gonna be y'all fault.
Hey man, we've woken the sleeping giant. Go for it.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say what Sam was just saying. That whole kumbaya thing, I even had to think about that interpersonally, and it all goes back to Mr. Fuller. We get together and do what? What are we looking to accomplish? Because if getting together was going to solve some of these problems, we have perfected getting together. We get together for the party. We get together to go to church. We get together for the barbecue. We get together to have a photo shoot. We are the most getting together mother effers on the planet. We know how to get together. But if getting together was solving the problems, we would have solved them already. Yep. So I think that's the reverse now is that, and I even had to think about that. Like Sam was talking about lone wolf. I'm like going out. It's what am I going here? I have so many other problems on this planet. And now because of you guys like you, I can see the pain and I can see the trauma. So now am I going to consciously know that I'm going to a trauma party? Because that's all this is. Ain't nobody solving no problems. Everybody broke. Nobody got nobody, you know what I'm saying? So what am I doing? I'm going to a trauma party? Like we really have to think about these things and be honest with ourselves. Like really honest.
And if you're going to a trauma party, you deal with it as that, right? I mean, every now and then you go to one of them trauma parties and see the thing is like I said, I might sit in the corner and drink my drink and watch everybody else. And then when I get tired of that, I go home. And because I'm so aware of environments, if I start, because I used to work in on lock units, right? being together sometime is like when I used to be on a lock unit. If you wanted to stay safe on a lock unit, you had to be aware of your environment. You had to be aware of certain people in the room that was crazier than the other folks, and all this other kind of stuff. And so, if I go to one of these parties I probably shouldn't have never went to, and I start feeling that vibe, it's like, I'll catch y'all later. Where you going, man? I'll catch y'all later. And if I know you, I said, it's getting ready to happen. And people who know me, like, yeah, okay, because it's like, that's how crazy some of our environments are. It's like being in a nut ward, right? It go from 0 to 10, and it feels like it's sudden, but it ain't that. It ain't always that sudden, right? It ain't always that sudden. The only time it feels sudden is because a certain person walks in. And if that certain kind of person walks in, oh yeah, it can be sudden then, right? But you got to pay attention to who that kind of person is, right? Because there's just some people who just get off on chaos. Chaos makes a dead person feel alive. Now, hear what I just said. Chaos makes a dead person feel alive. And when I said dead person, I'm talking about a dead soul. And some of them folks doing the shooting are dead souls.
Boom. I mean, and for folks that don't know what Sam meant when he said something's about to happen, this is what he meant. This is about to happen. This. When things go left and they go all the way left, and it happens over and over, it's just conflict. And it's all trauma at the end of the day,
right,
and misunderstandings, which we can't get away from. So this is what we're referring to. So we did have a question. And this question comes, and this is more geared towards the helping professionals. Okay. Let me get this one. So, and Aaron, you are more than welcome to add some feedback for this question. But Erica asked, as therapists, how do we have consistency in the work of healing? Any thoughts on this? Or not?
Well, the thing is,
I see a therapist, but I ain't a therapist, so
you can still answer the question.
I mean, technically on paper, I'm not a therapist. I've been doing therapy off and on for 25 years, because the last few years I don't do much individual therapy kind of stuff much, because it just it's more than I can handle these days in my old age, that one-on-one stuff. But I don't think enough therapists have done their own work, and I don't think enough therapists have done enough cultural work around the trauma. Okay, when we're talking about Black therapists, and I know that if a therapist is listening, how dare he? I mean, no, it ain't no how dare he. It's for us, it's a constant evaluation. It's not just go get our degree and go do some therapy. For us as Black folks, it's a constant. If you're going to do this work, it's a constant evaluation, and it's a constant evaluation because we can get easily hooked into our easily hooked into our clients' stuff, because it's our stuff in many ways, right? And so we have to be constantly aware of that, right? I call that parallel trauma. It's difficult for us to do this work because we do have parallel trauma. We come from the spaces our clients come from. We feel for our clients, right? And especially when you're dealing with baby clients. That's why I don't do baby clients, right? Because I got to realize this is not my child, right? Because if I don't realize it's not my child, I'll have a house full of children who are emotionally conflicted and end up getting me a case, and so and
taking out parents and caregivers,
and so the thing is I don't think that is talked about enough, if at all, is the parallel trauma that we that exists with us. I mean, some people have been using the term lately because the sanctuary model discusses out of California, but for us as Black folks, that is we have, it's a constant evaluation of our emotional state when we're doing individual therapy, especially with people who look like us, right?
Mhm.
And if you're not willing to do that and admit that you need to do that, then you can get thrown off your square, because one of the biggest issues as Black people we have, therapists or not, is with boundaries. And we've always had problems with boundaries. And to the point where it's been harmful to us and our growth, and harmful to people close to us. We don't know how to not we tie our loyalty to our Blackness in very negative ways, and and that whole keeping it real is ends up being another catchphrase to make me do something that's not in my best interest because you look like me.
Absolutely. There was a follow up question that
Uh-oh.
is tied in. I think you kind of answered it a little bit, but how can we make therapy cool and acceptable? I'll dive out first on this one. We can't make it cool or acceptable because we ain't gonna take it serious enough. We have to make it something that we see to benefit who we are as a people. And Sam, you were just talking more on the one-on-one therapy model, but honestly, I think for Black folks, group therapy is a very significant way for us to heal. And Sam, you've done groups forever. I learned how to do groups from you, and they have been pretty powerful where you have these aha moments. But the key is when you're doing groups with Black folks, it can't be like how you've been trained to do other groups where everybody has to talk or they have to fill out worksheets. You have to be there to, the attendance has to be on point. You will lose people when you do that. You got to let people just be in those spaces, because that doesn't mean that they're not listening because they may glance at their phone or things of that nature. But that group therapy model, I think, for Black folks is really, really beneficial. I also think that traditional therapy is not the golden ticket for us to get better. And I've been one who's been advocating on this for quite some time. Traditional therapy can be beneficial, but the healing that we need is a multi-layered. So we need to pick our pockets. If you can't get to a professional, that's great. But sometimes there's some self-work that you need to do, or you need to get around some like-minded people who are working on their own healing journey. But don't just think that you need to be face to face on someone's couch dealing with your trauma, because that ain't the only thing that's impacted you.
You
Can I
bring
add
up.
something to that, Brandon? Oh, go ahead, Sam. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead. I don't.
No, I was gonna say, you kind of mentioned it, but safe spaces, uh, just particularly, and we're talking about men, but I know, but safe spaces for men to where we also can be accountable for our bad behavior, because a lot of times that's not something that's talked about amongst men. And I know we're going to do a show on this, but particularly the sexual recklessness and all this other kind of stuff, to where we're not talking about that in a manner to where it's bad behavior and the negative effects. The second part, though, is, and this is just from personal experience, you showing your growth is great therapy for people around you. If you are participating in something that is helping you grow, it's like anything. If you throw a seed in the back in your yard and you pour some water on it, eventually you want to see a goddamn flower. You want to see something. So many people are talking about making positive strides and positive results, but their behavior is not matching what they're saying. If you want to have a real impact, and I totally believe this, you have to be the example. Men will follow. Your children will follow. People will follow if you're really doing the work. And if they don't, okay. And you also have to have patience as well. I heard this, and I just want to mention this. I heard TD Jakes did some interview, and somebody asked him, about being a pastor and his kids or something like that. And he had said a story, and I thought it was really interesting. He said, I had to learn to have patience. And then he told the story about the fact that his 14-year-old daughter had a child, very young, and how I heard her do an interview, and she said it took me 15 years after that happened to even find out who I was. And sometimes I think during that therapy process or for healing or whatever, we want immediate results. You want results after you told your kid to sit his ass down. It don't work like this. This is learned behavior. It doesn't immediately work like this. And we have so little empathy for each other that it's hard for us to even understand the process. Brandon, you talk about it. Healing is a process and it's a journey. but we never want a journey. We literally want this thing to go in a blender. And I get it because it's very painful, but we want to go in a blender, spit it out real quick. So I just think that people in general doing the work themselves, you'll start to see and getting around like-minded and just being patient with yourself. But at the same time, like you said, Brandon, being around other people, it's not just paying a therapist, man, find some, it might be only 2 or 3 of you guys that can come together and talk about your experiences. But if you guys are getting some constructive results, then maybe that's what the group has to be in order for you guys to grow. So I'll go ahead and mute myself. Sorry about that, y'all. Yep.
Yeah, and I agree with you. But if you're gonna get 2 or 3 people together, they got to be at a different space of what they're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but the thing that Brandon brought up is that that's probably why, what he was talking about with the group stuff. I've learned that, and especially with men, and I'm starting to find out that's true with the women too, although their response is a little different, is just doing group. And basically when I do my groups, all I do is ask questions, or throw concepts out. We're so busy surviving, we don't even know the concepts that people are using to talk about us, right? I mean, toxic masculinity. I talked with my guys, and they're like, "What is that?"
Say
And
it
then when
again.
toxic masculinity,
All
and,
these terms are talking about
right,
Black folks, and people don't know. Yeah.
right. And then I described what toxic masculinity is, and one dude said, "Oh shit, that's us." You know, he sure did. Out in the clear blue, you're like, "Oh, wow." And then another one come back the second week. He says, "Man," he says, "I've been ever since you talked about that toxic masculinity, I've been paying attention to my behavior, but I've been paying attention around us." And he says, "It's all around us." He said, "Until you brought that up, I wouldn't never wear." And see, and my goal when I do my groups, I ain't trying to fix you. I just want you to have the opportunity to have some different kind of information, right? I want you to walk around in your life being aware, not just walking around. A lot of us we're trying so hard just to survive and function that we ain't even aware of our environment. We're not even, we think we smart. Even the smartest folks are not really truly aware. If I can teach you how to be truly aware and also question not only the white folks around you, but the Black folks, what they telling you and what they got you believing. If you leave out my group and say, I don't need no 130 groups to do that. If I can get you to start thinking about why you do stuff, not judging why you do stuff, thinking about why you do stuff, right? And in there, that will stick with you. Because when I run into guys later on, they talk about the things they remembered back then about made them start thinking about to do stuff different and thinking about themselves, not beating up themselves. One of the most, I think, the most cherished experiences I've had, and I've lucky enough be old enough to have them now, is when I was at the Mall of America and a young lady came up to me. I had never met this young lady before. And she said, Mr. Simmons, and it's like, I'm out, trying to get my little shopping on, and or probably was out trying to let my wife get her shopping on,
You were
really,
trying to get the new J's?
man, I ain't got a pair of tennis shoes. And the ones I got are from, I got a really barely wear a pair of I don't even know I don't know if they're Jordans or whatever, beautiful gray and white tennis shoes, man, that are in the closet. And, they're just in the closet. I don't wear tennis shoes. I'm old school, and I don't have that fascination with stuff. But, and she goes, Mr. Simmons, and you don't know me. You're right, little girl. I don't know you. What can I do for you? She says, well, my man used to be in your group. And the ironic thing about the young lady was she wasn't with dude when he was in group, right? He was in group because of his incident with the mother of his child, right? And whatever he had told her about, she says, he keeps telling me you wouldn't have liked me before I was in Mr. Simmons' group, right? And she remembered that, and he runs up, and then he came up later grinning, that kind of stuff. But that was a interesting thing that he remembered, and then when I asked him about his kid, he says, "Well, I'm going to court now. We still have our difficulties and that kind of stuff, and every now and then I mess up, but." You taught us this because every now and then you mess up don't mean that you're a bad person. But the thing is, now I have the skills to not repeat it the same way I did before. And so my whole goal in group is not to have nobody to be dependent on me, not in that kind of way, but have some skills so they can get out their own way, right? The system is screwed up. We're living toxic environments. All this is real. And just be honest, all that's real. But at the same time, is if you learn how to be aware and learn how to be patient with yourself, learn how to show compassion, accountability to other folks. That don't mean you have to, have them around all the time, but that also means that it leaves you room not being angry and bitter all the time. Some people say that Jesus, when he was on the cross and he looked up and he says, Father, they know not what they do. Right. And so, yeah, I think that's where I'll leave that.
Hey, Brandon, can I say something about what he just said?
Absolutely, go for it.
That is, for Black men, that level of impact is something that we should all think about, because we hear constantly the stories of, and I'm not saying this is all the time, but we constantly hear the stories of coaches. We hear stories of great coaches and all these other guys, but hearing somebody and I just love everything that Sam just talked about, but that's a guy that had some brokenness in his life and had some experiences and was able to get with another Black man in a safe space and was honest and said, this guy helped me change my life. And the reason why I can empathize with it is because my dad, when he retired from ministry maybe 2 years ago, I started talking to some of the guys, and I had two guys in particular. One guy is probably going to end up being the mayor of New York soon in the next couple of years. And another guy does real estate out in North Carolina. And I started having conversations with them, and they pulled me to the side. It was like, yo, dude, I was knocking at your dad's door like 3 o'clock in the morning when my parents kicked me out. And he was the only person that would listen to me and be empathetic with me, but also put a foot in my ass. Is like, dude, this is not, you got to start thinking about your behavior. This is not working, what you're doing. And as men, that's the kind of, when I hear Sam and I hear people, even you, Brandon, that's the kind of impact we should be thinking about having. Not what kind of clothes we're wearing and all this kind of stuff, because everything else will take care of itself if we're having that kind of impact on our, I mean, and think about this other thing, I'll shut up. Sam, a woman came up to Sam and basically was like, thank you for helping my guy. That, to me, that's impactful, because you have a woman that's being accountable, like, hey, this is another brother that helped out my man. So that's just impactful, man. There's a lot to learn just in that right there. So Sam, we appreciate you, bro.
Absolutely. And Aaron, and that's just on the other end. That's the impact. A lot of times, this is a very little secret. A lot of times, it's women that are bringing men to therapy in general. Sam know that.
We talked about that. Yeah, we talked about that.
It never fails, man. I'll get an email, a phone call, an inbox, something of that nature from a woman, and she's like, "Hey, I have a son. I have a nephew, I have my partner, my husband, my dad. And it's usually them that are connecting men to do that work. And at some point, as men, we have to, step up and do it ourselves as well. But it's been my experience where a lot of times it's the women that are being the plug for the healing. So with that, folks, we are going to get ready to wrap it up. Any final thoughts from you, Sam, before we go?
No, this was, fun. It was okay.
Yeah, we got okay, B.
Yeah, man. People get mad at me. When do we get a good or a great? You go talk to somebody else.
Oh man, now we appreciate you, Sam. We appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming by the Jegna and The Thinker. Any final thoughts for you, Aaron, before we go?
No, just continue. I think Sam said it best, man. We have to be honest with ourselves and our conditions. That's the first step before we can do anything else. We have to be honest about where we are. We talk about the football analogy all the time. I used it the other day, but I said, if you got a defensive end that keep hitting your quarterback, at some point, you got to stop the play and take a timeout and be like, all right, y'all, we're not blocking this play correctly. Or do we even know what the play they're running? Do we even know what's happening on the goddamn field? And those are things that we just have to address. And I just appreciate Sam and you guys always just giving me an opportunity to share. And I hope everybody found some constructive value from this conversation. And hopefully you can the main thing is impact your family. Start maybe thinking about some different ways you can change your behaviors today, not tomorrow. Put some of these practices into practice immediately and just be kind to one another. And we'll see you next time.
That's right. Thank you all for coming by the Jegna and The Thinker. Please remember that healing is not a destination. It is a journey. And it's up to you to get started on that journey today. We'll see you next week. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube and share it on all your social media platforms. Peace.